Okay, in the quiet darkness of Windsor Great Park, Royal Lodge stands with an air of stillness that feels almost unfamiliar. Its pale facade, once a symbol of continuity and inherited certainty, now carries a different meaning. It is here, behind its iron gates and sloping lawns, that a contradiction quietly unfolds. A prince shaped by privilege, negotiating for the right to remain in his own home. This is the modern reality for Prince Andrew, a man raised within the protective contours of monarchy, accustomed to a life where residence, role, and respect were almost guaranteed. For decades, Royal Lodge was not merely an address, but a reassurance. It spoke to a world in which the Queen's second son belonged naturally, where his place within the family felt unquestioned. But as the monarchy evolves under King Charles III, continuity has become conditional. Reports suggest ongoing discussions, expectations, and reassessments, not as part of some dramatic power struggle, but as a reflection of an institution determined to protect its long-term standing. Even a home once viewed as permanent is now subject to scrutiny. This tension between past privilege and present accountability sits at the centre of Andrew's story. Royal Lodge has become a battleground, not of conflict, but of symbolism. A place where the consequences of reputation, duty, and public expectation meet. And in this quiet, uncertain struggle over a house, another question emerges. What does Prince Andrew represent to a monarchy increasingly defined by transparency, practicality, and public trust? There was a time when Prince Andrew occupied a far more assured place within the British royal landscape. He was the Queen's second son, widely described by commentators as a figure she held in particular affection. His early life carried the momentum of that privilege. Official engagements, military structure, and a sense of clarity about his public identity. It was during his naval career, especially throughout the Falklands conflict, that he appeared fully aligned with the ideals of duty and service. Images from that era, crisp uniforms, purposeful movements on deck, and the unmistakable seriousness of wartime responsibility built a picture of a young man stepping confidently into his role. In those years, the public saw not controversy, but commitment. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, Andrew served as a visible ambassador for the monarchy. He travelled widely, attended ceremonial functions, and hosted dignitaries with the assurance expected of a senior royal. His speeches were polished, his appearances well received, and his presence a reliable part of the institution's rhythm. Royal Lodge was woven into this early identity. Nestled deep within Windsor Great Park, with its broad lawns and sheltered privacy, it provided a physical anchor to a life defined by ceremony. The house supported the image of a prince whose role seemed preordained. When he married Sarah Ferguson, their partnership was framed as a blend of warmth and formality. Their daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, reinforced a family narrative that felt relatable, even hopeful. Yet beneath the strong visual identity lay a fragile underpinning. Much of Andrew's public standing depended on inherited assumption rather than consistent institutional relevance. The monarchy of that era was more tolerant of public opacity. Expectations were softer and scrutiny less relentless. Andrew's confidence, so apparent on walkabouts and official missions, rested on a system that had not yet been pressured to justify itself in modern terms. As time moved forward, that mismatch quietly widened. Public expectations shifted. Transparency replaced tradition as the measure of value, and the image Andrew once held, once stable and certain, began to drift out of alignment with the world around him. Long before the defining moment that transformed Andrew's public life, the quiet indicators of decline had already begun to surface. They were subtle at first, a reduction in official engagements, a calendar that thinned year by year, and a growing sense that his role no longer aligned naturally with the monarchy's direction. His appointment as a trade envoy had once seemed a logical extension of his royal profile. Yet over time, the role became increasingly complicated. Certain associations, meetings, and business relationships attracted scrutiny not because of explicit wrongdoing, but because they appeared out of step with the standards expected of a modern public figure. These were issues of optics, moments where judgment, or the perception of it, fell short. Financial pressures added a quiet but persistent strain. A senior royal lifestyle, once supported by defined duties, became harder to maintain without them. Reports over the years referred to loans, negotiated support, and private arrangements, all suggesting that Andrew's financial footing was less secure than it appeared. Royal Lodge, with its scale and maintenance demands, symbolised this tension acutely. It was both his sanctuary and a constant reminder of the life he was struggling to sustain. Meanwhile, within the institution, a gradual repositioning was underway. The then Prince of Wales, now King Charles III, had long championed a streamlined monarchy, one focused on clear roles and demonstrable public value. Under this model, every member of the family would need to justify their presence through service and accountability. Andrew's decreasing public role left him vulnerable within this shifting landscape. This decline did not announce itself. It unfolded quietly, almost imperceptibly. A missed engagement here, a reduced appearance there. The contrast between public expectation and personal trajectory widened with each passing year. By the time the major crisis emerged, the framework around Andrew was already fragile. His relevance within the monarchy had waned, his financial pressures had grown, and the institution's commitment to a leaner future had taken shape. What followed, the moment that captured global attention, did not occur in isolation. It was the culmination of years of gradual retreat, private strain, and misaligned expectation. In the years since the turning point, Prince Andrew's life has narrowed into something far more private, structured less by duty than by circumstance. Where once he moved through a landscape of public engagements, diplomatic visits, and ceremonial visibility, his world has contracted to a few familiar spaces, the most significant being Royal Lodge. Under King Charles III's leadership, the monarchy has undergone deliberate streamlining. Roles must be justified. Resources must reflect public expectation. The conversation around Royal Lodge was therefore inevitable. The residence, with its size, upkeep, and symbolic weight, belonged historically to senior working royals. Yet Andrew no longer held a public role, a fact that shaped every institutional discussion. Reports indicate that the king encouraged a move to Frogmore Cottage, a smaller, more practical residence aligned with Andrew's current position. To the institution, the logic was clear. A monarchy facing modern scrutiny must demonstrate responsibility in its private arrangements. But for Andrew, Royal Lodge remained more than a home. It held memories, identity, and continuity. It was a piece of his life that felt unaltered when so much else had changed. Sarah Ferguson's continued presence at the lodge provided him with companionship and emotional stability. Their relationship, unconventional yet enduring, became a quiet counterbalance to the world outside the gates. Their daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, maintained warm support, though their own lives required distance from anything that might overshadow their roles as modern, independent figures. Institutionally, Andrew's position remains complicated. He is part of the family, yet not part of the public-facing monarchy. His presence requires sensitivity, particularly at major events. Appearances must be measured. Visibility must be carefully considered. Within this framework, the Royal Lodge dispute reflects a broader effort to reconcile compassion for a family member with the expectations of a nation. This is the reality of the aftermath. A life reduced to essentials, shaped by choices made years earlier, and defined by the challenge of living within an institution that must protect itself to survive. The turning point in Prince Andrew's public life arrived with a clarity that neither he nor the institution could avoid. The global attention surrounding his association with Jeffrey Epstein created pressures that escalated rapidly. But it was the BBC Newsnight interview that defined the crisis. While intended as a response to public concern, the programme instead became a moment of profound misjudgment. In the hours after broadcast, reactions from commentators, viewers, and institutional analysts converged. The tone was described as detached. Certain remarks felt misaligned with public sentiment. What was meant to restore confidence instead raised further questions about understanding, judgment, and the capacity to navigate a changing world. International headlines followed. Newspapers across the UK, Europe, and the United States carried front-page analysis. Television studios framed the interview as a watershed moment, not only for Andrew, but for the monarchy's relationship with public accountability. Within the institution, the impact was immediate. Senior advisors and family members understood the gravity. Public trust had been shaken. In the days that followed, decisive steps were taken. Andrew announced he would step back from public duties. Charitable patronages were returned, affiliations dissolved. Organisations that had once welcomed a royal association now moved to protect their reputations. It was a transition both swift and stark, a senior royal stepping down from the public stage almost entirely. Royal Lodge took on a new symbolic role in this aftermath. Without official duties, the question of residence became more sensitive. How should a monarchy responding to public pressure manage the private arrangements of a prince no longer serving in an official capacity? How should resources be allocated when institutional credibility is at stake? For Andrew's immediate family, the moment was deeply personal. Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie maintained steadfast loyalty, while Sarah Ferguson continued to offer support. But institutionally, the shift was irreversible. King Charles III, already committed to a disciplined, future-focused monarchy, moved to protect the crown's standing with clarity and speed. The Newsnight interview marked the end of one life and the beginning of another, one defined less by public role and more by consequence. In the muted light that settles across Windsor's long avenues, Prince Andrew's story feels less like a closed chapter and more like a lingering question. It is a story shaped by privilege, altered by consequence, and suspended in a space between past certainty and an undefined future. Royal Lodge stands as the clearest symbol of that ambiguity. Its quiet rooms, framed by decades of personal history, carry echoes of a life once defined by official purpose. Today, those same rooms bear the weight of reflection. A residence that once represented security now raises questions about relevance, responsibility, and the evolving demands placed upon a modern monarchy. Andrew's journey illuminates a larger tension within the institution itself. The monarchy must preserve continuity while adapting to a world that expects accountability. Family loyalty must exist alongside public responsibility. And decisions once made behind closed doors must now withstand public scrutiny. For Andrew, the path ahead remains uncertain. He retains the constant presence of his immediate family, the familiar landscape of Windsor, and the shelter of Royal Lodge, at least for now. But the legacy he carries has changed irrevocably. The roles that once defined him have dissolved, leaving a life shaped more by what has been relinquished than by what remains. In this quiet aftermath, the narrative becomes contemplative rather than conclusive. Not a story of redemption, nor one of decisive closure, but a portrait of consequence. A prince navigating a world where inherited privilege can no longer shield against public accountability. And perhaps that is where this story ultimately rests, in the stillness between what was and what cannot be reclaimed.